Hi, everyone. I'm Isabel Estevez, and I'm an economist specializing in the use of industrial and trade policy for green economic transformations. Most recently, I've worked in senior positions at the Roosevelt Institute and at the Sierra Club in the United States, which are both organizations that have been very involved in the effort to shape the Biden administration's trade and industrial policies. So, what I'll do in these 5 minutes is share some insight into what those of us in the green economic transformation space have advocated for in terms of trade and industrial policy and how far we've gotten in translating those proposals into concrete policies under Biden. The first big proposal, which had very broad backing from a range of organizations and from the electorate, was a proposal for large-scale public investment in green economic transformation, but paired with the goals of job creation and redressing historic inequities and underinvestment in our physical infrastructure and social services. Some people call this public investment push a Green New Deal. Others did not use that term, but there was broad alignment on the need for a package of this sort to tackle climate, job creation, and equity objectives simultaneously. One estimate of the size of the investment gap to achieve those goals was 10 trillion over 10 years. And we have not gotten those 10 trillion, but what we have gotten under Biden is several pieces of legislation that invest large amounts of public dollars through tax credits, grants, loans, and government procurement into a range of industries and infrastructure for green transformation. That includes notably the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and other pieces of legislation. The Inflation Reduction Act specifically includes investments in things like manufacturing and infrastructure for renewable energy, electric vehicles, and decarbonization of heavy industries like steel and aluminum. And even though the investment is below what is needed for a full green transformation, there's still an important down payment. Many of us are also continuing to advocate for more public investment and also for more use of industrial policy tools like public enterprises as vehicles for building a greener economy, because public companies are not as constrained by the need to generate profit and are therefore better able to do things like build clean energy projects where they're most needed, even if the returns in those places are lower. Some of that public investment also comes with standards. For example, the Biden administration is pursuing a Buy Clean government procurement initiative, which gives preferential treatment to cleaner products and government purchases for things like cement and steel for certain infrastructure projects. Some public investments have also been structured to provide preferences to producers that uphold certain wage standards or use products manufactured in the US. So that's why you hear about standards like Buy American, which refers to requirements for government purchases to give certain preferences to US-made products, or Buy America or Build America, which requires infrastructure projects receiving federal assistance to do the same. Those measures have been criticized by some as being overly protective of the domestic economy to the detriment of trading partners. I think the right level of protection for the domestic economy is very hard to determine, and every country does have the right to think proactively and strategically about what kinds of jobs and industries it needs to foster to sustain an economy that's sufficiently diversified, resilient, and capable of supporting quality jobs. So this question of how much to protect an economy is a tricky and nuanced question. And it also has implications for trade policy. So one of the challenges for countries like the US and the UK, which have relatively higher costs of production than many other countries, is that it can be hard for domestically manufactured products to compete in the international marketplace with much cheaper products. But there are several solutions to that problem. One of them is making investments that increase productivity, for example, investing in skills and training. Another is public investment in renewable energy at larger scale to lower energy costs, which of course is also a win for climate. And another way to deal with a relatively higher cost of producing domestically is by using trade tools that adjust the prices of cheaper imports to account for carbon dumping or social dumping that may be taking place. For example, by establishing fees for imported products that are more pollution intensive than domestic products, or fees for products that are made with lower labor standards than those applied at home. The Biden administration, for instance, has been negotiating a global arrangement on sustainable steel and aluminum to create fees for steel and aluminum products that are above a certain threshold of carbon intensity. But the specifics of that proposal are very important and they still remain undefined. The US Congress has also introduced several carbon border adjustment bills, which unlike the CBAM in Europe, though those bills tend to create fees based on carbon pollution intensity. Carbon border adjustments are also controversial. Many developing countries feel that it's unfair for their industries to be punished for polluting when contributions to greenhouse gases are cumulative and the US has been polluting for such a long time. But I think there can also be creative ways to include appropriate exemptions for developing countries while still pursuing trade measures that prevent a global race to the bottom, where the international trade system pushes countries to compete by lowering environmental and social standards to reduce production costs. And they should include, of course, as a starting point, also properly consulting with those countries when designing any trade tool that affects them. Relatedly, many of us have advocated for a climate peace clause for governments to press pause on using dispute settlement mechanisms in international trade agreements to challenge other countries' climate measures. And that's very important because these mechanisms often are used against developing countries to undermine their efforts to improve environmental and social standards. So there are many of us working to develop those policy solutions to help create an industrial and trade policy that reinvests in domestic manufacturing and jobs while pursuing climate action and behaving more responsibly toward trading partners. And that's not an easy task, but it's largely a creative problem-solving challenge and, of course, a challenge of building up political will. Thank you.